had a call in a special meeting. I do want to go to the conference at 5:01. Establishing a quorum, Mayor Candy Cargill present, Mayor Pro Tem Dennis Moore,
Present.
Councilman Ron Moses,
Present.
Councilman Robbie Grilkin, absent. Councilman David Barron Jr.,
Present.
Councilman Bobby McClung,
Present.
City Secretary Tyler Walsh, on my side, City Administrator Warren Escovy, City Attorney Tim Tuggy, Financial Guru Joe Martinez. On deck. And prayer. I'm going to give the invocation. I'm going to ask Kelly and Alex to please have in the places. Lord, we gather tonight grateful for this community and the opportunity to serve. As St. Patrick showed through faith and courage, guide us and act with wisdom, humility, and a heart for others. Bless this council with clear minds and steady purpose. Where there is challenge, bring understanding. Where there is need, lead us to good and faithful decisions. As Easter approaches, remind us of renewal, hope, and new beginnings. May our work reflect that spirit and bring peace and unity to all we serve. Bless this community and all who call it home. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
This is the important announcement. Founders Day is on March 28th. I hope everybody comes. Aaron Band, as you are aware, is back on. It wasn't. I'm an idiot. We're kind of learning this kind of way. And then send your letter on the United States Post Office to the United States Postal Service. And be sure and fill out the survey for the comprehensive master plan. I have copies of it.
Can I have a few
Yes,
announcements?
Yes, ma'am.
So this right here is going to be a Blanco countywide test of the emergency alert system. It's going to be on April 2nd. So you may see, it's going to say test, and you may see it, you're signed up for the notifications on the website. You'll see there's a push notification or a text. You also may hear the siren when we're trying to set it up to where it goes off. So just be aware, April 2nd, it's a test, just to make sure that everybody can get alerts. And
April Fool was our
true, the second. And I have a second announcement as well. Also later on this month, I believe on the 28th, is somebody's birthday. So could we all say an early happy birthday?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So, is that what you got any comments? Go ahead, Steve. I missed your well. We have the fresh haircut on. Telling him that he got.
Say that again?
Telling how handsome he looks.
Tonight you'll discuss the fate of the ballot issue currently scheduled for the referendum on May 2nd. I've sent you a memorandum outlining what I understand to be your option, some of the pros holding a referendum election in May, November, or possibly an alternate date coming this fall during the budget planning season. The concerns that seem to be on your minds are, number one, the complexity of the proposal and the ability to educate the voting public. May 2nd will only give you 6 weeks to educate the public and advertise the election. Turnout will be low and many may not be representative of the registered voters. It does not appear that the city is ready to go with such a campaign. Number two, cost and integrity of the city election. The budget currently allocates $10,000 for the election. All election laws must be protected if the city runs the election. Training or outside help may be necessary whenever the city runs an election. Number three, the city's need for additional revenue. The city is in the black, but does not forecast significant additional revenue beyond the cost of inflation. $375,000 to $400,000 is expected if such a referendum is passed. Delaying the election beyond the 2026-27 budget cycle will delay the revenue that could be available by 1 year. Street sidewalks, and public spaces are in severe decline and must be addressed by the city council sooner or later. So ensuring that the funds go to the streets, sidewalks, and public spaces is a concern. The additional revenue must be separated from other general revenue and placed in dedicated fund specifically for streets, sidewalks, and public spaces. This entrusts us to ease the pressure on city council annually established. I urge you to run the city election in August or September if that is legal. That will provide ample time to educate the public and advertise the importance of the referendum to the tax-paying residents. Specifically, 5 months will ensure time to properly advertise the referendum election to turn out those that care. 5 months will ensure time for a quality explanation of the issues and establish street, sidewalks, and public spaces in the future budgets if the referendum passes. By doing so, you will get the needed input from your constituents. The urgency of streets, sidewalks, and public spaces will be defined by the company as a high or low priority. Specifically, you will have direction from your constituents. Your future budget decisions will have support. Election integrity can be reinforced by working closely with experienced election personnel. Costs to confront the election or to conduct the election are budgeted and I believe adequate to advertise hire experienced personnel.
Randy Martin.
Hi, y'all. Okay, since I retired in 1998 and got on the council in 1999, I sit at home and of course I'm in town all the time. I don't know how many times I've stopped right out here and talk to our visitors, Blanco, from all over the country, all over the world. Actually, to be careful right out here between us and the pizza place. And also the sidewalk. The porch property, our sidewalk, it belongs to the city. It will be on the streetscape plan. I don't know, I can't even count how many times, and that's part of it. And I just want to ask you on item 3 to please not choose the plan and the new business part that will take the longest to receive this money that can help, that can be applied to the streets and the sidewalks in the town. But item 3 is really important tonight.
Okay, and we have no staff presentation tonight. We have the consent agenda. We have old business is consideration, discussion, take possible action on a petition for this application by second advice that I believe we are moving to the executive session once again. So, on to new business, which we are moving item 3 to item 1, which is consideration, discussion, and take possible action on the cancellation or for city administration of the May 2nd special election. We are moving this because we have Rosemary here. Rosemary? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. And Kim, for any questions? And
Thank you so much.
This was, I guess, tabled from, after your discussion at the last meeting. And the question presented, of course, is, as it sits right now, we have canceled county administration of sales tax election. Actually, repeal of the property tax offset and potential imposition of a reassignment of the tax to dedicate that half penny to roads, streets, and sidewalks. The question presented for tonight is, do you stick with city administration of the election scheduled currently for May 2nd? Do you postpone it to the November 3rd next available general election date? My suggestion is if you do decide to move it to November 3rd, then you would just go back and adopt the original ordinance, which called for county administration of the election. But if you choose November 3rd. So those are your basic, your third option is to not do anything, just repeal the whole thing and cancel. But that's not consistent with your previous resolutions to hold an election on this issue sometime this year. So those are the three three options that are available for, I think, discussion. There may be others, but that's how the table is set as far as I know. So,
And one thing I would add as well is that Rosemary is always here with the county, that she could probably give you some timeline that if you decide to move forward, what specific dates are, but she's quite a bit more familiar, so she can answer some of those questions.
Have any questions or comments? Yes,
would it be appropriate to ask Zanami if she might offer any comments or thoughts, or just here to answer questions? Or?
I'm really here just to answer questions if you have any. I really can't.
Yes. Okay. Just wanted to appreciate it. Sorry.
it's okay. Yeah,
So if it is November, what does that timeline look like? When does it ramp up? When does, like, what would need to happen to make it to be November and to be successful? Well, to be on the ballot, successful or not, rather than not yes or no.
Well, if you just go back and readopt the original ordinance, you will have called the election for November, if that's the path you choose. And then we have the ordinary procedures that the county, under that ordinance, the county would be rehiring the county.
County to
And
manage
the county would manage the election as Mrs. Donnelly could address the timelines appropriate there, but you'd certainly meet the deadline to call the election. The ordinance would be in place, even now, so.
What other parties can we expect in November?
Well, it's a general election, so it will only be the county, federal, state, and local
And
elections.
so as far as cost, how does that break down for us?
You would split the cost with the county, which the county has, it's pretty close to 11 voter ranking. So split the cost with us, which I can't give you a specific amount, but it is substantially lower than what it would, even if you shared it with someone in May.
So it'd be less than what we were projected to spend if we were to have done it this May.
That makes sense, because like you said, there's about 11,000 voters in the county, and we'd be about 2,000. Or 2,000 of the 11,000 essentially.
We have 2,000 voters.
Well, I think it's
Like
like 1,500
1,200, 1,300.
registered voters. So, yeah. So that makes sense. It would be significant to that.
Well, yeah, originally we were going to share it with Johnson City, but we both canceled our elections because everybody was our for candidates because they were unopposed. So. What about the suggestion that we look at an earlier date? I know there may be different legalities if we're voting yes or no on implying sales tax, but this is just to repeal the tax credit, the property tax credit. So just for the breadth of the conversation, is that a third choice if we wanted to do this early in August so we could potentially capture that in this next budget?
Or does it have to be
There's such
a
a budget
November or
asshole.
May?
Let me answer that question off the top of my head. I would need to check. I think, I will check tonight. I'll check while we're meeting here. I think that you have to have them on the regular biannual, semi-annual calendar dates for a sales tax. I don't remember. In my memory, thinking of a special election on sales, but I'll find out as we're talking. It's not imposing any new sales tax, it's just changing the use. Correct. I just don't know what the top of it.
Just another question for clarity, not necessarily on the process of this, but just on the amount. So the projected $375,000 or whatever for that could then be available for the roads and those things. Is that the actual dollar amount, or is that based on the voter approval?
Well, the way the tax works, and this is a good question, because I think there's been some confusion about, there's a lot of language about new revenue, and the fact of the matter is that you currently, the cash money for that sales tax comes into the city. It is already being collected by the city. But because of the manner it was imposed by the original election, it then serves to credit and adjust the tax rate and reduce ad valorem tax. So we remove that, and now let's just round it up to 400,000 for easy discussion. You previously had unrestricted $400,000 of sales tax revenue, any use properly for the city, any use. You would now impose a restriction on that 400,000, and it would sit over here in a special account. And if there's any new revenue to be raised, obviously there's two ways to have it. Your appraised values go up, or your tax rate goes up, and it's going to be on the ad valorem side where you get more revenue, new revenue. So I know the language, maybe everybody understands that, but when I hear new revenues, I worry people are thinking like, oh, there's a half penny of new money coming. No, that money is already here. It's just on the ad valorem side where that adjustment's occurring. And I'll be blunt, I would enjoy and appreciate the opportunity as your attorney. And I'm sure Joe would appreciate it too, as I think about these scenarios and putting aside the administrative issue of doing a May election. It would be helpful to actually go through a budget year where we are focused on simulating the effect of that tax in reality, in an actual budget exercise. I can tell you, I've gone back to the comptroller worksheets, and I think I told you at the last meeting that because your rate is so far below the voter approved rate, you're only affected by this 0.0005. But I'm still a little bit concerned as I think about it from just the practical reality. Put aside all that calculation. Practical reality is you're gonna go from $400,000 of unrestricted revenue to $400,000 of restricted revenue. And how that affects your budget, I don't know proportionally. $400,000 is what percent of your total budget? And right now, 30,000 of it goes to roads and streets, is that right? Something, so we're gonna go up to 10x on that restriction and.
Which leaves a wrinkle or a hole in the budget that must be filled.
One way, yeah, assuming you don't,
Yes,
assuming you don't, yeah.
because we're not gonna reduce operational costs.
But I guess-
think so.
But
The
it's
increase
in
in
the
the ad valorem
restricted
would
category.
color, right? Like, so that the ad valorem
Presumably, it would make up.
would be higher, but is it, I guess that's what I'm saying, is it the second, was it apples to apples? Is that 400 now going to be restricted and the ad valorem's only going to be 200? Like, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm just trying to get right in my mind, like how.
Based on your current
It's gonna
rate,
be apples to apples, right?
Yes,
So-
yes, I think it should be. I would love to see it in reality. I think that'd be helpful to really see you all go through a budget year, in reality. Presumably, the formula works, and I believe it does. What we're being told and how because we never, we're well under the voter approved rate. I mean, last year it was 52, and we're at 43 or something, 41, 42. We're well under it. So in a sense, we've never really taken, happily, we've never really taken full advantage of the offset. Because we never, as some cities, Austin and these cities at 75 and 80 and 65, they get a real impact on their ad valorem. Ours not so much. We're just at that percentage, you know. So
One question about your point, I don't disagree with needing to kind of understand the impact.
No.
But you're not suggesting we wait a whole nother year and talk about this and push this out.
no, I would,
You know,
that scenario.
Play the numbers for a year and then talk
Kick
about
the
this.
can, Bobby, kick
No,
the
sir.
fucking can.
If anything, you've already made up your mind, and I think appropriately, if you're going to do one or the other, have the election in May, pass the ordinance now and do it in November. It will be an ordinance. It will be the law of the land. Either way.
So when you say budget, you're going through our budget workshop process.
Correct. This year.
Coming up in July.
Correct. So we sort of just gained it. It's always helpful to do that type of stuff. I'm not suggesting that should be the reason. I'm comfortable with the calculations now. It would be instructive, you know.
So I had a good conversation with Rosemary this morning, and the election laws have changed significantly since I left the council last in 2015. That doesn't mean with the proper planning, we can't do our in-house elections, but understand there's a deadline as soon as tomorrow. We have to meet if we keep it in May. So I backed off a little bit on my insistence of that, and I, you know,
Yeah,
when I-
Derek,
when I
even
look at the
since
point
you're
that
not
the money
asshole,
comes
you're only
in as
one
I go
asshole.
along, which is, some of that's gonna be general
Only
use.
one
It's gonna be
asshole.
restricted. So not all the entire 400,000 will be restricted. The portion that's going to ad valorem will come into our general fund. So that's helpful. That way we're not just, if we don't need $400,000 for roads, we're not just locked into that until another election down the road. Or it sunsets. So all that said, that I'm not sure we have time to explore after this meeting. Tonight is it legal to do this in August? That would still be a bit of a heavy lift, and I'd be a fan of doing that. It's easy enough to do that, but all that said, so that would probably be the first choice if we were organized enough to do that. But I'm not sure we could accomplish that tonight and find out what that, if we could make that decision. So I'm leaning towards codifying that we will do it in November and not continue to kick this down the road where
Come on,
next year
kick
or
that
year
can, Bobby. You're good at kicking that fucking can.
So if we could put it in the same motion and say we cancel the May election, but we insist that we carry on the May election in November.
The May election, November.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the May election in November.
Yeah, just cancel the May date for the election we've already approved. Now, it also gives us the opportunity to adjust. Do we want all of this to go to a portion to go to roads and streets? Maybe half of that and the other half go to, not be so locked up where it's roads and streets only. That doesn't mean we can't use it for roads and streets. Well, that was kind of a discussion point. I'm happy to make a motion, but we probably should have some discussion. Do we want to keep all of that all set for roads and streets in that lockbox or? Well,
Jim, would that decision have to be made in this motion?
I'm sorry, I'll answer another question.
Okay,
The reallocation of the funds.
yeah, the reallocation, if we're gonna take the whole half-cent and do it all to roads and streets, or if we're gonna do like half, a quarter penny to roads and streets, and, a quarter penny, does that need to be in this motion, or can that be decided later?
If we were gonna do a November election. we
Yes.
need to define
It
that.
could be decided later. I don't think you could do a three-fer. I don't think you can repeal the tax and then split it. That's basically three actions. I think you're limited to two actions by these referendum.
we spoke about this before, that we thought we could do that, but I think it was described as a two. We're repealing the property tax credit and we're reallocating as such.
Well, no, if all we're doing is reallocating for one purpose, yes, that too for,
Okay, in our
Okay.
previous discussion, we had the ability to split it, but now we do not.
well, what I'm uncertain about, and we certainly would have time if we're doing this in November to check this. I don't think you can repeal the half penny and then say reallocate a quarter penny to roads and quarter penny to general revenue.
Well, then I would say, just for the sake of efficiency, I'm happy to make a motion that we cancel the May election and we keep our ordinance that the election will be in November of 2026. And I would request that in the April meeting, we take a look at the allocation of the ballot there.
Like plenty of
Because
time to do that.
I'm relatively certain that was the discussion we had last time. We were going to do a quarter penny here and quarter penny there. We decided, no, let's do it all roads and streets.
I think you could, as I think about this now, you could repeal the half penny and impose a quarter penny just for roads and streets, thus freeing up the other quarter penny for general tax revenue.
That's basically the same.
Correct.
That's what I was
Yeah,
suggesting.
that's the two for, yeah. I was thinking of reimposing twice, and I don't need to do that, so. But we can address that. If you take action right now to reimpose the original ordinance, calling a November election, for the,
November 3rd, 2026.
yes, sir,
Yeah.
for the original purpose of repealing the half penny and reimposing it for half penny for roads and streets. And then with a direction to us, we come back to you in April with, do you want to tweak that in some way?
But clarification that we will be contracting with the county
Oh,
election
yeah.
services to hold that election.
As the original ordinance. Correct.
I'd second that motion.
Well, I've so moved that we cancel the May election and coordinate with the county election to hold at the same time. And as you just suggested, that I understand correctly, that we could also we're repealing that property tax credit and allocating 4%. Or revisiting that.
Language.
We're revisiting that in April.
Language to be decided.
Yes.
Okay, and I'll clean up that motion again, that we cancel the May election and work with the county to be part of their election in November without fail for our ordinance.
Yeah. Well, I've got questions on that, but if we don't need to decide that now, then that's fine. I'll wait till April, because I'm gonna slow this down. I don't have an issue with that, but I've got questions on the language piece, so that I've got questions or concerns there, but not with this. Yes, I don't.
So, all those in favor? All those opposed? All those, nothing? Motion passes. Thank you so much. And so you're retired, I think, sounds like.
Pardon, you're rehired. Oh, but okay. Yes, I'll issue a new contract and I'll send it over as a next.
Thank you.
So. Now, number one. Yeah. And discussion and take possible action on approval of the fiscal year 25 city audit. Sorry, I had you, block.
Feel like I was just here about 6 months ago. And this is now for the fiscal year 25 model. I did make a little bit of a PowerPoint, but you know, I tend to go slightly off script, but I'm going to try to keep it brief and feel free to ask any questions. You go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to cover a couple of things that we're required to cover as far as auditor's responsibility. You know, part of our responsibility is to we're not the ones that are taking ownership of the financial statement. That's to provide those non-attached services to do that. And so through that, there's a process, and we go through start out where we do a risk assessment, we get an understanding of your internal controls, and then we look at your risk and what possibly go wrong, or as far as things we need material stated, and then we perform the audit and ultimately issue. So I just want to mention that we do have adjustments. Typically in the state of Texas for smaller cities, there's always a little bit of adjustments that are made. We do some non-attest services. We take your information and we prepare the financial statement, but ultimately the city takes city management, being Warren and Jose, take responsibility and sign client representation of those financial statements. So that financial statement that you had in your packet that comes back to this PowerPoint, that was officially issued as our final today. They received it today. It did not change from that draft that's in it. So I don't know if y'all have heard a lot about the Senate bill as far as that's affecting the cities. They have to issue their financial statements by March 28th. We're also new revenue. Property tax purposes. Well, y'all will have met that. It's financial statements are issued. It's affecting all the cities across the state of Texas. So March 28th.
It is.
It is. So more than 1 week. So anyways, yeah, the next slide. So we had no difficulties with management. I basically reached out to Jose back in December and said, "Man, you better give me all your information as soon as possible." And as soon as we had a request, we had the information come right into us. A finding, it's kind of similar to last year's finding in regards to adjustments. There are some things that we need to work on as far as making sure that our financial records are in line with financial reporting. A lot of times Jose's focus on budget, cash basis type of financial statements, but that's not governmental accounting standards. So the adjustments that are needed for that. And so that's basically the overall adjustments that we had. is for financial reporting purposes. So we're gonna work on those year-end close, journal entries, so that I don't have to make a significant amount of those, or help them assist in making those.
Is it being more accrual?
Yes, there's certain types of accrual, sales tax accrual, believe it or not, you know, you for the next 2 months that you're receiving as a revenue, at year end. So there's accruals there, there's like, hotel motel tax accruals, then there's also, for your, enterprise funds, you have capital assets, and those all have to be reported a certain way, and so, it's mainly has to do with accruals, and that's really where it's at. I mean, day-to-day operations, you know, checks going out, bank recs, that's handled fine, you know, that, they're doing that, it's just, you know, auditors are not your personal accountant to make those adjustments, so we're required to communicate that, yes, there are adjustments that we are making to help these financial statements. So, audit responses, controller or, you know, financial reporting guru that handles their, you know, their after, or their annual financial update. They're more worried about their day-to-day operations. I still think that there's room for Jose to kind of improve, and we'll work on that. And so I do believe that we can handle that. Last year, there was not a lot of time in between last year's audit being issued and this year's audit. And so they're being started. So I think we'll do it. The next thing I'm going to cover is some overall financial highlights. You don't need to flip through the report, and if you want, obviously the first pages 1, 2, 3 goes over opinion. Basically, we've given you the highest level of assurance that our firm can possibly give you. We're giving you an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, meaning that your financial statements, we believe that your financial statements are reported free of material mistakes. Stay on this slide. Basically, this slide right here covers your full accrual statements. And it mentions, this is like, for instance, your governmental activities, you're reporting on your capital assets, all of your possible debt. It's your net position. So the thing that I always look at is your overall net position. And it's roughly around 11.5 million. And so one of the things that I always like to look at as far as cities is, like, we never really expect to see that position just go 1 year way down another year. This is a government. Governments are supposed to be stable. But we'll see that net position gradually increase. And I do like to pull numbers from fiscal year from 40 years ago or so when I actually started doing audit, moved out here to project. And your net position went around 10.9 million. And I can see that over time, you know, it's kind of gradually increased. So those are good numbers. That's typical of what we're going to typically see. Also, your revenues have steadily had an increase, and your expenses have steadily increased, and that's normal. But nothing overly. It's like, you know, the standard 100,000 here and there each year since fiscal year 2022. So those are all good signs. But the statement that's probably more important, so the next slide will go. But y'all would probably hear more about is your general fund. So one of the things that you always look at is your overall general fund balance. And so and then you compare that to your overall expenditures for that general fund. And so right now you're sitting at roughly, it shows, so you have about an ending general fund balance of about 980,000 and your overall general fund expenditure about 1.9 million. And so you've got roughly about a little over 6 months there in fund balance. I do want to note that your expenditures for the year did decrease from last year. So FY 24, your expenditures were roughly 2.1 or 2.2 million for the general fund, and your fund balance was about 600,000. So, probably that, I'm probably, I've looked at your budget and y'all say around 2.1 million. It's probably more realistic general fund expenditures for your city, but 900,000 exceeds that threshold of the recommended amount, which is about 3 months of fund balance. So if you're at like, around 500,000, 600,000, you're good. It's recommended that you're around anywhere from 3 to 6 months of fund balance. So like with about 2.2 million, you're right there. 500 to about 1.1 million is kind of what's recommended. Again, you never want to see a fund balance that's really large. This means that you're just not doing anything. You don't want to see a fund balance that's really low because you don't have anything reserved in case of emergency. And so you're sitting right up at a good mark. I like to say it's nice when government financials are boring because that's exactly kind of what you want to see. Just stable. Yeah, that's good. Boring is good. So the next thing I'm going to cover is the budget actual. We noted no budget over here, so your actual expenditures were under with the legal level of control of which was budgeted for your general fund. And the last thing I just note is y'all continue to have a lot of cities been asking, what about our pension? Well, y'all continue to have a fully funded pension plan. So meaning you have a net pension asset, but a net pension liability. So that's good. It looks like it's been that way for quite a while. So very solid. I mean, you can see that on page 51. But it's y'all continue to kind of support a very good fund balance, a very good position there where you're basically your total pension liability is covered by. But we are within TMRS, so they give y'all your standard rates, your required actuarial rates to contribute there, so y'all pay that, and for whatever reason, y'all still continue to have a very solid, very funded. That's all I got.
Overall, less efficiency than last year, pretty much. Clean audit this year and having this more simple.
Yes, and again, I handed off to Jose. I mean, he told me about this bill back in August, and you know, it was one of those things where all my cities are, you know, I said the earlier you give me the information, the quicker I can start working on it. He literally looks like 2 months after year, like second week of December, got me pretty much all the information needed to kind of get going and get this thing rolling. So, yeah, this new bill basically says you're going to be done within 6 months after year end. And Paxton, the Attorney General, is definitely asking cities about it. So he's watching over it. So that's the big thing right now. So y'all can brag if your city made it. And we're good for FY 25.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just gonna say one thing, we did have to register with the Attorney General's office, so they're watching over us too. I'll just say.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're ready to register.
Everybody.
Everybody.
We don't need to do a motion or anything. Do we need a motion?
You have to accept it, don't you?
Yes, okay. Okay. You want to call it?
Well, yeah, that's new business. Yeah, new business item number 2, right? That's the discussion. Oh, that's utility rate. I'm sorry. We're looking at item number 1. Item number 1. Yeah, new business item number 1. I move that we accept the 2025 city audit as presented.
Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And, consideration of two is consideration of special take possible action on the update, is it not warned?
It is, thank you, Mayor. This is an update and what I'm looking for guidance on what you'll want to see. So
We don't want to vote on this.
we don't want to go on this tonight. But a couple things that are going on. We're looking at, a 5% overall increase across the board for utility rates for the entire city. And in fact, talking to some residents, talking to council members, I think one of the thoughts that you had, one was really looking at making the residential rate slightly less than 5%, and then they making the commercial rate a little bit more. So what you have that I kind of was putting together, the one to look at, and this is more conceptual, is what if we did a 4% across the board for residential and 7% for anybody that is a 1 inch or larger. So that all that businesses are of that. About half the businesses in town are 5/8 inch. So that was kind of the idea. So you'd have a 5%. The other thought was, I think we talked conceptually about outside the city rates. So what we did, this hasn't changed, but we tightened the numbers a little bit. This hasn't changed much at all, but we did look at taking $2.5 million for the Cielo water line, and then, as you remember, we have about 1,000 taps inside the city and 162 outside. That represents about a 14%. But we take also the amount, 14% of what we owe on the water plant. That's about 600,000. So the idea was $3.1 million divided by 162 over 30 years. That equals about 60% on those outside the city. So
you're putting the water treatment plant on the people outside the city.
Portion of it.
the portion,
Portion of it. Okay.
the 14%, which is 162 tax. It's 14%. So we owe about $4 million, and we spent more than that on the water plant, but it will be operational. But you're taking that, and then we're not double dipping. What we take doing is the 60% we put on the customers outside the city and paying off that $3.1 million. What we would be doing is we'd be taking from the INS, and I think the package showed it a little bit better than what that is there. You take that $3.1 million, and then you would move that out of the debt service, out of INS, to actually being paid by enterprise fund. And what that would do is that would, I don't know how much, we'll know in April, but that will reduce your taxes. That will allow us to put more money into the bond and start spending, because this would actually lower your total assessment. Let me get to the next page. That's essentially what the concept. And the reason why I wanted to bring this to you is I'd like to have solid numbers in April for you to actually be able to vote on this. But what I do need, I talked to some council members individually, and some of the thoughts was that maybe, I'm going to address this here in a minute, maybe we wanted to do half to 60% down and then half to 60% in August or September we'll pass the budget. There's some thoughts like that, but one of the things I do want to do is I did talk to Tim, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we do is supported. So I have reached out to the person that did our rate study back in 2022. I will have a number for you on what the cost would be for Tim's student update. Because if we're doing something this big, if 5% is totally expendable, no one's gonna really have an issue.
60%.
The 60% could have an issue, and I really would want to see what the cost of an update to the rate study would be. So I should have that by the end of the week.
Because what if the rate study says that's low?
Might.
So, I mean, that would be good.
Yeah.
I mean, because otherwise, I believe some have been in the 70%. And maybe they were, they're under litigation right now or something. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Well, I
case.
think your attorney and myself, we want to make sure that whatever you're doing, we're not inviting,
Yes.
a challenge to the PUC, Public Utility Commission, or make sure we're running all those tracks. The other thing I wanted to do, and for the benefit of the people listening, I also did pull, I was just thinking, I didn't even look at what the cost would be. I just wanted to figure out how we were doing compared to some other towns. So if you saw that packet, already is higher than us. Drifting Springs currently is lower than us, and Wimberley is higher than us right now. As far as we saw that in the packet.
Service by Aqua,
Something.
yeah, that is under it also. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate you putting the data together, because I think a decision like this certainly needs to be data driven, right? And that's where I think making a good case, like not just pulling 60% out of the air, it's based on the cost for the water line and all that, and putting that cost on the people who it serves, as opposed to taxing the city citizens to pay for outside the city.
I'm sure that we would not be double dipping. We would not be accepting money from people inside the city and outside the city. We'd be doing that.
So I think I think the rate study would be helpful if it's good to get. It's not too expensive to get, but then yeah, I mean I think.
How much was our previous rate study? Do you know?
I don't know, because the PUC actually paid for it.
Oh, okay.
It's a grant.
It was a grant.
Grant that a former council member received and got for the city. So I'm hoping though that he'll only make this an update, so it won't be the full cost. Gotcha. That's the hope.
So as I understand it, the idea of maybe splitting this in April and October, is that just to run the traps and make sure it's a defensible position? Second part of that question is, if we were to split it, I would be inclined to let them know that it's split, so we don't have to come back and make any decisions. Yes, you're only going up this much in April, but next budget year it's this. So get ready for it.
I personally don't have an issue either way, but I think Councilman Moore, if you want to explain your thoughts.
Yeah, it was just more, and that's where I like seeing the data, and I think the rate study, and then looking at the debt service and the INS and all that would make it more defensible. But my initial thought when we started talking about this previously is, I mean, the 60% rate is pretty high jump, right? And so I was just trying to think, okay, if we're going to get there, how do we stair step it in that direction? Still fully saying that we're doing that, so it's not surprising. It can be a good deal. But yeah, so it's not just
Make it hurt a little less.
yeah, just to let people prepare, because I mean that's a big shift.
I do think we could add to that defensibility by reminding them that we dropped the outside rate significantly. They used to pay 50% more always, and now they're paying $10 more, or something like that. So for those that complain, say, well, we made a mistake of pulling it back too far and punishing the citizens inside the city limits to pay for their infrastructure.
And I think also the data study, the debt service, all of that, then also, I mean, makes it much more defensible on how we do that. So yeah, I was just trying to help it less, because that's a big job.
Yeah, one of the other things is, we just dealt with audit, and you heard good news on the audit, but digging into that a little deeper, we're doing much better on the general fund side, where we have $485,000 rainy day. On the enterprise side, we're only at 110, and so those are important issues. Even though we may have $600,000 in reserves, we can actually look at it from that standpoint. You're like, oh well, that's not quite as solid, and that's why we have to look at it. Just And I will say that the original study that we had done in 2022 had talked about a 35% rate increase We did 20% the first year. It was like 9 months after it was issued. Then after that, the only thing we've done is the AMR meters, probably giving us another 10%. But having said that, council and administration didn't raise the utility rates as much as what the rate study indicated. And it is what it is. We did our best.
I would like to ask for one figure, if you put that together for April. Is that to compare what is the 60% increase outside of the city? What does that compare to the rate they would have been paying if they were paying 50% more before that was changed to $10?
We can look at that analysis.
Because certainly from the defensible positions, you're not even, because that's 60% more of that reduced rate. And it used to be 50% more.
And yeah, and then we only need 10%.
Right. Right, man. Net balance there.
It's 1%.
Oh, I see.
We pulled a lot off the table and put it back on the burdens of the property taxpayers in the city, and that was even like that. So what's the added?
Just got a reissuing fee that was, used to be imposed.
But in April, we'll have that all put back together, and hopefully we'll have some CMAP that helps support this as well. Because they're looking at that too. Thank you.
That was a good one. First of all, thank you for all the time you put in putting all this together. I just want to kind of run through this and revisit some of this, just even in this first paragraph. Reasons for the rate increase. Rainy day funds of $108,000 in the enterprise fund is insufficient compared to the $2.6 million operating budget. So what that tells me is the budget that we set this last budget year is insufficient to operate our current operation as we expected. So just human, if we do not impose a rate increase, the small portion across the board, are we able to afford the services that we currently have? Or do we have to increase these rates to keep the current services that we have? Current providers.
That's a it's a nuanced question. I'll try to answer it directly. Based on the fact that our operator has a 5% increase on us every year, that materials have increased about 4 or 5% every year, the city would need to look at an increase, not in April, but you're gonna have to get one done this year. I would say that you start hitting into your reserves. If we don't pass something in the next 6 months, you'll cut into your reserves. And that would mean cutting into your general fund reserves a month, because you basically have very little reserves on the enterprise side. So the answer is yes, you have to do it in the next 6 months.
To continue conducting business as we are, we have to cut into our citizens' pockets so that we continue to allow our business to profit.
Based on our current provider, yes.
And the result on the audit, it showed that the enterprise fund was over $300,000 at home. The enterprise fund was $300,000 in the negative. Currently, on just the net operations for last fiscal year. So it sounds like it would, to your point, if we want to continue to lose money every year in the enterprise fund, then we could take no action.
I'm just asking because I don't like continuing to dip into the pockets of our citizens.
We're looking at both options. We're looking at, so you have to either increase revenue or you have to decrease expenses.
Yeah, it takes us water a minute.
They did. I think it was like 3.5%.
Yeah.
But then Infomark was 5.2%. I think you also have a percentage increase on things like chemicals, labs,
Yeah,
sort of electricity.
Well, just so I can make my position clear in public, I'm absolutely for imposing the outside of the city limits fees to cover the debt which incurred by A, their proportion of the water plant, and B, the line that we're gonna fix outside the city. At this moment, the more I think about it, I'm against continuing to put more rate increases on our citizens. And I'll be more inclined to take any other action necessary before imposing more fees upon my citizens. I'm not saying, of course, we're not gonna vote today or anything, but I just want to understand that's what I said on it. I know I was the one that sat there at budget season. We need a rate increase if we're going to take it. So, rate increase. That doesn't mean I am supportive of a rate increase. I'm saying, yeah, it's required if we continue to do business, and I think
This is a business decision, so I'm fine with any discourse.
but I'm only one of 5 council members, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew where I stood on that at this moment. If we were to vote on it today, so
What was that?
vote the increase on the.
Five.
That's what the debt portion of this.
Can you also come back then to that point in April with what that 4% would be on our citizens?
Yes, I'll see exactly how it's for you.
Yeah, so to your point, Councilman Moses, you know exactly how much we're asking the citizens to pay.
That would be
And
great.
maybe you can balance that towards the
This is good because we have guidance and we can start actually getting the real numbers.
Thank you. That's it. Just speaking on my heart.
Anyone else?
Should you work on this?
Yeah, very good work, though. Appreciate all the time you put in.
So we'll see in
Numbers are numbers. Thank you.
April now. And so, good, 6:02. It's adjourned this meeting and we will go.
So.
That's the end.
regular session is now in session at 6:46. No meeting was, no business is conducted. Right,
I don't have a quorum.
No business was conducted out there. I believe we have,
Regarding to old business item number one, I'd like to move to table, old business item number one, subject to reports on CMAC and city administration, city administrator, and April meeting on the defined service plan for South 21.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
I just, did I have it?
To adjourn.
Yes.
Do I have a second? All in favor? I got it first time.
Oh,